Hello, welcome to the channel. This video is a sermon idea for Isaiah 40, 1 through 11, which explores some obstacles that may keep people from returning to God. Israel first were slaves, and God set them free. Unfortunately, as many do, they use their freedom destructively. Their unfaithfulness made them weak and vulnerable, and opened the door for their enemies to come in and drive them out. This experience is referred to as exile, and unlike the slave which is brought out, the exile is called back. This sermon idea is to focus on those who have already been set free from Egypt, but now find themselves trapped in Babylon. In other words, we want Christians who are living unfaithfully to turn towards God and come back. But once they do, they will surely face obstacles, one of which might be that they think their sin was too great. But God's message to the exile is comfort, so too the preacher will do well by comforting those listening. That no matter what they've done, the price has been paid, and the time is now to receive God's grace. Once the offer is presented and the exile turns toward God in contemplation, the journey home might seem too far. The journey from Babylon to Jerusalem would have been 30 days. Walking through rivers and valleys, over mountains and through the wilderness, nothing but obstacles. To which we get an awesome image of paths straightened, flattened, and smooth. The journey is a spiritual one, and the exile will have 1,000 excuses why not to take the first step. But each step made towards God is made with faith that moves mountains. Another obstacle we face is weakness. As the exile will be bogged down by guilt and overwhelmed by the distance, they might also feel too weak to make the journey. Withering grass and fading flowers communicate frailty. The idea is that the exile is so weak that if they turn towards an all-powerful God, they won't survive. They think that if God breathes, they will be blown away, that if God speaks, they will be destroyed. But the wind and word of God are life-givers. Human witness is actually compatible with God's strength, not threatened by it. It's not a hindrance, but a prerequisite for the journey of faith, because it's the powerless and the faint whom God will renew. They are the ones who run and never tire. There is one final obstacle, and it's probably the greatest one of all: fear. Returning to God can be scary. Those in exile may be unsure of God's demeanor upon their return. After all the idolatry and unfaithfulness, what will God's reaction be? In this final section, we see that as we turn to God, He comes to us. Like the father running out to meet the prodigal son, He comes running with might and authority, His reward and recompense in tow. Churches are filled with people who are physically present, but some may have wandered off spiritually. It's these exiles that the passage is encouraging to turn towards God again. Challenge them to ask themselves, what is their excuse for not coming back today? I'm too sinful. The penalty is paid double. I'm too far away. The mountains will be lowered and the valleys will be raised. I'm too weak. The breath and word of God will give you strength. I'm too afraid. Listen. For those who turn their hearts to Him, He comes to them, not as jailer or judge, but shepherd. Not to punish, but to feed. Not to reject, but to gather. Not to cast out, but to carry. And not leave behind, but to lead you home. And trust me, He knows the way, and that'll preach.